You will teach them about inclusion and racism and sexism, so you can train and teach your kids to be different. Love does not isolate. Love does not indoctrinate. Loving people don't decide to just opt out of educating somebody. Sometimes being a parent is teaching your child things you may not agree with, but are culturally and legally relevant. I mean, no parent wants to talk about child abuse and assault among teenagers, but you gotta have the conversation because the risks involved are worse than having the conversation. And having an intellectual, open-door communication about safe sex, consent, and orientation will help your child in ways you may never know. Children who feel accepted by their parents, heard, they feel safe, they feel cared for, probably is very less likely to do dangerous illicit behavior. If parents have a simple talk with a depressed teen, they just cut 93% of the odds of a child attempting suicide. Supporting your children, regardless of religious beliefs, protects a child over 90% of the time. And abstinence-only education is a Band-Aid when you need a cure. It would be great if every teenager waited until they were emotionally ready to have sex. It would be great if people who weren't going to be good parents didn't have the ability to be parents. But that's not the way the world works. Kids are going to make stupid decisions. They're going to do stupid things. The difference with a loving parent is they teach children. So when children and teenagers make decisions, they have the information and they are responsible for whether or not they want to make use of the life-saving information. Now, parents, you are legally responsible for what your kid does sexually until they turn 18. If you don't prevent a child from being in an abusive environment, misconduct, you can be arrested and sued. You can't tell kids not to have sex because that might make them more likely to want to do it, to spite you. You can't control if your kids have sex. You can control what information goes through their mind when they're being pressured to have sex, or maybe the person they're with is a safe person, but maybe they're not ready yet. Parents are responsible for children who don't know their options. What about kids who have no interest in sex at all? Asexual people. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of asexual people like sex. It's just different from how mainstream heterosexual people want sex. Some asexual people want a relationship but no sex. Some asexual people, they want sex now, but not for a long time. It's kind of like sporadic. There are people that can only have sex when they have an emotional connection. Some people don't want relationships at all because it's just not something that fulfills them, and that's perfectly valid. The problem with our society is expecting every teenager to be a sex-crazed animal. And that's how Southern Baptist churches that I've been in seem to run. They expect every man or every teenage boy over the age of 12 to be like a desperate hunter looking for illicit material. That's not true. A lot of people develop early, on time, or later. People like me, we didn't have a sexual awakening till I was 27. That was due to the very repressed environment I was raised. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. People develop at different times. Expecting everyone to be obsessed with sex is a gross miscalculation. And the problem with abstinence-only sex education, it's the fuel and the driving force for purity culture. Purity culture is a sexist environment that primarily focuses on men's enjoyment over women's enjoyment. And there's nothing wrong with occasionally focusing on one gender. I mean, writing a book about female sexuality is fine. Writing a book about just male sexuality, fine. But when there is a consistent leaning toward male sexuality, instead of it being directly in the middle, you have a problem. When a secular and religious structure focuses primarily on what men like, even you look at pornography, 90% of pornography is focused on men. Because I would say men are more likely to watch it, but women almost, the quantity and quality, the quantity of women who watch pornography is almost as high as men's. But pornography is mainly male mainstream. Because in all cultures, all religion, secular groups, men are primarily the focal point. You look up in the Webster Dictionary what sex is. It's always focused on the man. And sexuality is a spectrum. It can be hyper, it can be hypo, it can be none at all. The problem is we don't teach in church, and it spills out into the secular school systems. We don't teach people to find sexually compatible people. We believe that in the Southern Baptist churches I went to, as long as people believe the way you do, the person will behave in the gender role they're assigned by religion. They have no reasons not to get married to this person. They don't focus on compatibility. If someone with a high sex drive marries someone with a very small sex drive, you're going to have a lot of problems. And it's not the fault of the person with the low or the high drive. You need to find people who want compatible things. If you have a hyperdrive, you might not be compatible with people who are asexual. It can work, but it can be very hard. Find people who want the same things you want, or different things that are compatible with what you want. And if you decide you don't want any of it, that's perfectly fine. But in this culture of church and secular fellowship, you will be shamed by the very extreme forms of Christianity. If a man has no desire to get married, have kids, a family, a wife, he can't be in positions of senior leadership. Women have no voice if they're not married. They're invisible. Single people really are invisible in church. The problem isn't educating your kids. The problem is educating them without factual information, isolating them where they can't get the information, pulling them out of school. We need to start creating laws in every state and federally detailing what enthusiastic, consistent consent is. Someone should not have to say no for it to be a crime. If somebody isn't jumping on you with more enthusiasm than the person initiating it, that's not consent. The person you choose to be with should be as enthusiastically happy to do it as you. Now, there are people out there that take a while to get in the mood. That's fine. As long as you know this before you get into it. I've known many therapists who they would teach me about people. It takes sometimes women and even men, but we'll focus on women for a moment. Some women, it takes time for them to get enthusiastic about it. That's fine. As long as the person knows this. If someone's not enthusiastic and you don't know the reason, ask. Not everybody is ready to go at a moment's notice. It's not like it is in movies. That's why people go to the hospital, because they believe what they see in movies. And our culture is so sexually centered. The only way men get respect outside their home walls is to be the most sexually aggressive person. When you think of masculinity, you probably don't think of a very skinny, no muscle guy. When you think of femininity, you don't think of someone who likes mountain climbing or a female mechanic. I mean, people like their stereotypes. The problem